When my mother Patricia looked straight at me and said, "You're not half the woman your sister is," my heart clenched. But instead of staying silent like every other time, I pushed my chair back and replied calmly, "Then let her pay the rent for you." My father Gregory's face went pale. Rent? What rent? And in that moment the secret I had kept for 3 years began to spill out. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel, and where are you listening to this story from? What's time is now? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know who this story has reached. My father's confused question hung in the air. Rent? What rent? For years I had stayed silent, not because I was weak but because I was trapped. People who haven't lived it don't understand. They ask, why did you stay? Why did you take it? They don't see the invisible chains. When you grow up being told your only value is in how much you can carry for others, you learn to see your own pain as peace. You learn that your silence is the price you pay to be allowed in the room. It's a prison without bars, a learned helplessness where you stop rattling the cage door because you believe deep down that you deserve to be there. I wasn't just surviving my family, I was surviving the role they had given me. But hearing my mother's words tonight, something inside me didn't just break, it clicked into place. The lock finally turned. I looked past my mother, past my sister, and directly at my father. The rent, I said, my voice perfectly level, is what I call the $90,000 business loan you co-signed for Caroline. The one her PR firm defaulted on. The one that was about to get this house foreclosed on 3 years ago. The silence that followed was heavier this time. Gregory's face went from pale to slack-jawed. Caroline looked of all things betrayed. Patricia was the first to recover. She let out a sharp, scoffing laugh. "Hayley, what nonsense are you talking about? We handled that." "No," I said, "I handled that. That was a gift." Caroline snapped, finding her voice. "You offered. How dare you keep score? How dare you throw that in our faces?" "I didn't offer," I said, the cold clarity rising in my chest. "I was begged, and I'm not keeping score, I'm just reading the ledger." Patricia slammed her hand on the table. "I will not have this. You're being dramatic and ungrateful. We are your family. You don't get to bring up things that were given freely." Freely? I almost laughed. Nothing from this family has ever been free. "It wasn't a gift, I said, my voice low and steady. "It was a rescue." I looked at my father. "It started 3 years ago. I got a call from Mom late on a Tuesday. She was hysterical. She said Caroline's PR business had folded and that she defaulted on a $90,000 business loan. A loan that you, Dad, had co-signed." Gregory flinched. He remembered. Mom was crying. I continued, telling me the bank was calling, that they were going to put a lien on this house. She said, and I remember her exact words, "Your father's health can't take this shock, Hayley. It will destroy him." She begged me to help just until they could figure things out. I was 24 years old. I was a junior draftsman living in a tiny studio apartment, saving every extra dollar I had to pay for my architect licensing exams. I was living on instant noodles so I could one day build skyscrapers, and I said yes. I said yes because that's what I was trained to do. I was the responsible one, the stable one, the easy one. This is the trap of the normalization of cruelty. It doesn't start with a bang. It starts with whisper. It begins with small, reasonable requests that slowly escalate. My family didn't see it as exploitation. They saw it as logical. In their minds, I was the designated savior. Caroline was the star who stumbled. I was the crew member whose job it was to fix the set. They told themselves, "Hayley can handle it. Hayley's frugal anyway. Hayley doesn't have a life like Caroline's." They normalized my sacrifice so they could justify their entitlement. My generosity wasn't a gift. It was just a line item in their budget. So I paid for 3 years. I sent a check. That $90,000 didn't just come from my savings. It came from my future. It was the down payment on a condo I'll never get. It was the money for the licensing exams I had to delay twice. It was 3 years of saying no to vacations with friends, 3 years of wearing old shoes, 3 years of putting my entire life on hold. And the worst part, the entire time Caroline knew. She knew I was paying her debt, and it didn't stop her from posting photos of her new designer bag. It didn't stop her from going on that ski trip to Aspen. She watched me sacrifice my future to pay for her past, and she let me. I looked at my sister, who was now staring intently at her plate. "So no, Mom, it wasn't a gift. It was a bailout, and I'm done." I drove home from that dinner in a strange, cold silence. The adrenaline from the confrontation was wearing off, leaving behind a hollow quiet. Part of me expected my phone to ring before I even got to my apartment. An apology from my mother, an explanation from my father, even just an angry text from Caroline. But there was nothing, just the hum of my car engine. The apologies never came. Instead, the attacks began. The next afternoon my mother called. I answered, thinking, this is it. "Hayley," she started, her voice strained, "your father is incredibly stressed. All this talk about money and debt, it's not good for his condition. You really upset him. I waited. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, you were right. Just blame. I was responsible for my father's stress after he'd been part of a 3-year lie. What did you want, Mom? I asked. I want you to call your father and apologize for causing a scene. This whole thing has been blown out of proportion. I hung up. Minutes later, a text from Caroline. You always have to make everything about you, don't you? It was a family dinner and you turned it into your own personal pity party. You embarrassed me. I stared at the message. They weren't just grateful, they were offended. They were shocked that I had stopped playing my part. That was the moment I stopped acting like a daughter. I stopped waiting for an apology they were incapable of giving. The anger was still there, but it wasn't hot anymore. It was clinical. I am an architectural draftsman. My job is precision. My job is to document facts. My job is to make sure the blueprint is undeniable, so I opened my laptop. I created a new file. I called it the Ledger of Lies. Patricia was the first to recover. She let out a sharp, scoffing laugh. Haley, what nonsense are you talking about? We handled that. We walked out of that restaurant together, leaving behind the wreckage. I could hear my mother's voice rise in a hysterical sob as the door swung shut, but I didn't look back. The drive home was silent. Kelsey just put on some quiet music and let me stare out the window at the lights of Denver blurring past. This wasn't an emotional plea. It was an invoice. I drafted a new email. The recipients, Patricia, Gregory, and Caroline. The email was short. Enclosed, please find a complete ledger of the $90,000 I have paid on Caroline's behalf since August 2021. I require a formal written repayment plan within 30 days. If a plan is not received by that time, this file will be forwarded to my legal counsel to begin collection proceedings. The subject line was simple repayment plan request 30-day deadline. I stared at the send button for a single second, then I clicked it. It wasn't revenge, it was accounting. My email with its 30-day deadline was met with complete silence. Not a single reply, not an angry phone call, nothing. For weeks the digital void was so absolute, I almost convinced myself they had decided to ignore it to pretend my $90,000 invoice never existed. I tried to focus on my work, drafting blueprints, attending meetings, but the silence was louder than any argument. Then, 2 weeks before the deadline, my cousin Kelsey called. She was the only one in the family who ever bothered to check in, the only one who saw me as Haley instead of just Caroline's sister. Hey, she said, her voice hesitant. Are you okay? Hey, I'm fine. Kels, what's up? This is going to sound weird, but did you get an invitation to a party? Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gregory are throwing this huge family appreciation dinner next weekend. My stomach tightened. Appreciation for what? That's the weird part. Kelsey said the invitation says it's to, and I'm quoting here, celebrate Caroline's incredible journey to financial responsibility and paying off her debts. I almost dropped the phone. They're celebrating her. She hasn't paid me a dime. I know, Kelsey whispered. That's why I'm calling. It feels so gross. Dad's going, but I told him it feels like a lie. Are you going? I hadn't been invited. Of course I hadn't. No, Kelsey, I wasn't invited. Haley, you have to go. She insisted. You can't let them do this. You can't let them just Atasa. She was right. I was confused, but the cold analytical part of my brain clicked back on. I needed to see this. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. Send me the details, I said. I'll be there. The party was at a high-end restaurant in downtown Denver, a place with dark wood and velvet chairs. I walked in and saw them. My whole family gathered around a long table laughing. Caroline was at the center glowing, wearing a new dress I knew cost at least $800. Patricia saw me first. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Haley, what a surprise. We didn't think you'd come. Kelsey told me about it, I said, walking closer. I wouldn't miss Caroline's celebration. The air was thick with tension. Gregory looked like he'd seen a ghost. The dinner was excruciating. I sat at the far end of the table listening to my aunts and uncles praise Caroline. Just so proud of you, honey. It takes real character to bounce back like that. Finally, after dessert, Gregory stood up, tapping his glass. We just want to say one more thing, he announced, beaming at Caroline. Your mother and we are just so impressed with your hard work and your financial responsibility. My blood ran cold. I drafted a new email. The recipients, Patricia, Gregory, and Caroline. The email was short. Enclosed, please find a complete ledger of the $90,000 I have paid on Caroline's behalf since August 2021. I require a formal written repayment plan within 30 days. If a plan is not received by that time, this file will be forwarded to my legal counsel to begin collection proceedings. And as a little reward, Patricia chimed in, for all your effort. Gregory produced an oversized comedic check from under the table, the kind they use for golf tournaments. He presented it to Caroline. A $10,000 bonus, he boomed, for getting back on your feet and making us proud. I just stared. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I felt nothing. Just a hollow, icy calm. I recognized the number. $10,000. It was the exact amount of the final massive payment I had sent them last month. The one I sent after getting a frantic call from Mom saying, "Just this last push, Hayley, and we're finally clear." This wasn't just a party, it was a performance. They were publicly laundering my sacrifice, taking the money I had bled for and presenting it to my sister as a prize for a victory she had never earned. This wasn't just dismissal. This was theft. The applause for Caroline's $10,000 bonus was loud and sycophantic. My relatives, always eager to celebrate the obvious winner, were practically falling over themselves to congratulate her. Caroline was holding the oversized check, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. As the noise finally died down, I stood up. My chair made a small scraping sound in the sudden quiet. Every eye in the room turned to me. "That was a beautiful speech, Dad," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room. I was so moved. "I'd like to say a few words as well, if that's okay." Could I borrow the projector for just a moment? I saw the flash of pure panic in my mother's eyes. "Hayley," Patricia started, her voice tight. "Now is really not the time for," but I was already walking to the front. I didn't wait for permission. I unplugged their laptop and plugged in my own. The warm, glowing photo of Caroline vanished, replaced by a stark white screen with black clinical text. The title read, "Financial Report. The Caroline PR Bailout Project 2021 to 2024. The room was dead silent. I picked up the microphone, my hand perfectly steady. "Thank you all for coming." I began, my voice as calm and professional as if I were in a Monday morning boardroom. I was so moved by Mom and Dad's speech about financial responsibility that I wanted to contribute my own data to the presentation. I've been managing this particular project for some time. I clicked the remote. A bar graph appeared. "This is the project overview. Total investment $90,000. Source of funds me. Project duration 36 months. I heard a fork clatter onto plate. Someone in the back gasped, "90,000. As you can see from the payment schedule." I clicked again. A detailed spreadsheet filled the screen. The contributions were consistent, timed perfectly to stop foreclosure proceedings on the family home, which, as you know, was the collateral for Caroline's loan. I let them absorb the numbers, then I clicked again. The screen filled with screenshots. My mother's frantic texts. "Hayley, we just need a little more. Gregory is so worried just this last time. It will destroy him if we lose the house. You're the only one we can count on." The whispers were growing louder. My aunt looked at my mother, her face a mask of disbelief, and that I said, "My voice perfectly even brings me to tonight's wonderful celebration." I clicked one last time. The final slide was a high-resolution side-by-side comparison, my bank transfer from last month for $10,000, next to a photo of the oversized bonus check Caroline was still holding. This final $10,000 bonus was made possible by my final investment transfer, which cleared 4 days ago. I paused, looking around the room, meeting the eyes of my shocked relatives. I looked at Caroline, who had dropped the check onto the table, at my father, who was staring blankly at the screen, at my mother, who was visibly trembling. I just want to say I am so glad to finally see my investment being celebrated publicly. "Congratulations, Caroline." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. And then from the back of the room, my cousin Kelsey started to clap. It wasn't polite applause. It was slow, loud, and deliberate. An uncle next to her joined in, then another cousin. It wasn't an ovation, it was a verdict. I clicked the remote, turning the screen black, and handed the microphone back to my stunned father. "Thank you for your time." My cousin Kelsey was at my side before I even took a step from the podium. She just grabbed my hand and I grabbed hers back. She didn't say a word, just squeezed. We walked out of that restaurant together, leaving behind the wreckage. I could hear my mother's voice rise in a hysterical sob as the door swung shut, but I didn't look back. The drive home was silent. Kelsey just put on some quiet music and let me stare out the window at the lights of Denver blurring past. The explosion of texts and calls started before I was even home. I turned my phone on silent. A few days later, they showed up at my apartment in Denver. My parents. I saw them through the peephole, and my first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home. But I was done. Hiding, I opened the door. They looked awful. Patricia's eyes were red and swollen, and Gregory looked like he'd aged 10 years. "Hayley," my mother started, her voice thick. We just wanted to talk. I didn't invite them in. I just waited." "What you did at that party," my father said. It was humiliating. It was the truth," I replied. "We were wrong." Patricia whispered the words, sounding foreign and painful on her tongue. "We were wrong. We didn't realize. We talked about it, and we want to make right. We're going to add your name to the deed of the house." There it was, the final transaction. After 36 months of payments and a lifetime of being treated as second best, the solution was a piece of paper. The reward for my $90,000 was a share in the very thing I had just paid for. I almost laughed. "No," I said. Patricia blinked. "What? No, I don't want it. I don't want the house. I don't want my name on the deed." But Haley Gregory pleaded. "You're right. You saved it." "I know I did," I said, "and I don't need my name on a piece of paper to prove it. I needed respect. I needed you to see me. You couldn't do that. You can keep the house. It's yours, but it's not mine, not anymore." I closed the door. 6 months later, I was standing on a balcony, but it wasn't in Denver. It was in Austin, Texas. I had passed my architect's licensing exam. I had a new job at a firm that valued my precision. I had a new apartment with a view of the skyline. I'd been unpacking and I was holding a small silver picture frame. It was the last one pulled from the bottom of a box. A photo of Patricia Gregory and Caroline all smiling at some long-forgotten Christmas. I looked at it for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt done. I walked into my new bedroom, opened the closet and placed the photo inside a storage box on the top shelf. Then I closed the lid. This is a letter to you. To anyone who has ever felt like they were on the fringe. To the one who is always the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who was always expected to show up and never expected to shine. To the person who has spent their life being a supporting character in their own family story, I want you to know I see you. Your worth is not determined by their inability to see it. Your value is not a reflection of their neglect. That pain you feel, that ache of not belonging, is not a sign of your weakness. It is a sign that you were giving your heart to people who didn't know how to hold it. You don't need to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't need to sacrifice your future to pay for their past. Going to your own Paris, building your own Austin skyline isn't selfish. It's survival, so build your life. Build it with your own hands, be your own architect. Stop waiting for their permission to be celebrated. Stop waiting for an invitation that will never come. Stand in your own light and let that be enough. If you enjoyed the story, hit like and subscribe for more story. Share this story. You are not alone. God bless you. Thanks for watching.